Before we start, there's a short link to the slides. So if you want to check links or something after the session, here is it. For people who prefer QR, you can scan QR as well. I give it a moment or two. Basically, it's bit.ly/Leuven 2025 DDD. So let's begin. A couple of words about myself. My name is Val. I go on all social media as Valthebald, and I'm happy to work for Dropsolid, and I'm happy that our company is one of the sponsors of this great event. Really, I'm amazed by the level of organization. Thanks, organizers, for that. So in this session, we're going to explore behavior-driven development, what it is, why we can/should use it, and how Behat does that with PHP projects, why it matters, how we implement it, so the details, how Behat, what is the Behat approach to behavior-driven development, practical examples, and of course, how it all connects to AI, because that's a hot topic. My session wouldn't be accepted without me mentioning AI, right? So, what is BDD? BDD stands for Behavior-Driven Development, which is an extension of test-driven development. So the main concept of BDD is behavior, which is explained as scenarios. In Behat terms, we define scenarios in feature files, but that's details. I'll get into details later. So one of the defining principles of BDD is to use ubiquitous, almost human language for defining what the test is. So what is the input, what are the steps to perform, and in the end, what are expected results. So why it matters? I would happily join any anonymous bad coders organizations, and I could stand and say that my name is Val and I write terrible code. I wish I could say that I'm sober, that I didn't have any errors in my code for a number of days, but this number would always be 0. And all those, like when I write the code, it seems okay to me, but obviously when I returned it to it after, I don't know, maybe even a couple of months, it looks really terrible. And I really think it's not something that defines myself, but it's something which is only logical given the way we write code. So if you look at the milestones of people writing the code without mentioning people, so I don't mention prehistoric times because, okay, you probably don't know how to input the code using perforated cards, or even before that, when you take an axe and just start hitting the stone to output your assembly code. I'm joking, right? So the first high-level languages, which appeared around 60s, 70s years of the last century, just to give you an impression of what first high-level languages are. So the first high-level languages were Fortran, COBOL, and a little bit later, C. So now, if you think of a person who can think of a C as a high-level language, it's hard to imagine what our low-level languages are. So a little bit later, we had object-oriented programming, and World Wide Web has helped us writing the code in a way that we immediately got quite quick access to all the information that we have about how to write the code. Then we got visual programming and low code. But the trend is we write the code faster and faster. And by writing the code faster and faster, we also lower the barrier of people starting to write the code. And unfortunately, that also means that the quality of the code that we write gets lower. And with AI entering the area of writing the code, things become even easier and even worse from the perspective of the code quality. So if you use tools like Cloud Tool, Windsurf, and similar, you may notice incredible increase in the code generation speed, right? You ask something, and like Jamie said in his keynote, instead of several weeks, you get a result in several hours, right? But also, so you get the code really quick. And that's mind-blowing impression on when you start working with code generation tools. But if you work with these code generation tools more than 5 minutes, you may also have noticed absence of any guarantee that the code will work as expected or work at all. So we need to get ready to the situation when we produce much more untested code. So how BDD can help here? So we have common language that bridges the communication gap between technical and non-technical stakeholders. And behaviors are explained as scenarios, given something, when something, and then what results we are going to see. So we use common language. We have an examples of scenarios explained in feature files. We have tests also as a living documentation. So if we have a change, we have also a set of tests so we can see if the change that is going to be added to the system, is it a bug, or should we change the test, or should we add another test, or should we fix the implementation that breaks the test? Let's introduce Behat and how it answers all these questions. So Behat is a PHP implementation of BDD. It uses Gherkin syntax, which is quite close to the natural English. Actually, it is possible to write Gherkin tests not only in English, but in other languages as well, but it's a little bit exotic. So most people that I know, they stick to English tests. What's important for us as web developers is that it uses Mink library, also developed by the same organization as Behat. And Mink is an abstraction layer to control the browser. So there are Mink drivers for accessing plain curl, plain command line tool for accessing the website. But of course, if you use CURL, you don't have access to any JavaScript. Then it has more functional drivers like Selenium or Chrome or Firefox. So you actually can control, using Mink abstraction layer, any browser that you want to test your website in. So you have a base Behat installation. You have basic feature contexts. And again, we talk about that a little bit later, what context is. And you can extend it with the context. So let's have a look at the real feature written in Behat. So feature user authentication, all right? So in order to protect accounts as a website administrator, I need to ensure users can log in securely. That's the feature. That's what we're going to test. And then goes the explanation how the test should be executed. So, given I am on the login page, when I fill in username with admin, and I fill in password with password, and I press login, then I should see welcome back, right? That is simple. How this works under the hood? For every line in this scenario, I need a function inside the PHP class, special PHP class called feature context. which is called step definition. Every step definition may have arguments. For example, given I am on the login page, it could be a step definition that takes the last part, the login page, as an argument. So we have a step definition called to I am on the page, and it has the page name as a parameter. Then when I fill in username with admin, this also could be a step definition. There is actual step definition for this line. And this step definition function has two parameters, name and value, right? So there's a field name and a field value. So all this, yeah, before we continue to the feature context, installation of Behat is quite easy if you use Composer. And you have Drupal installation, so you use Composer anyway. So you just require Composer with, in most situations, with --dev. So you have Behat. Then you run quick initialization, which creates a Behat YAML file that contains all the configuration. And most probably you also require a set of Mink extensions to control specific target browsers that you want to test with. Behat YAML is also quite standard YAML file that should seem familiar to anyone who worked with Drupal. The most important part for us is the context part. So you can list as many contexts as you want. Normally, you have maybe some context coming from standard libraries like Mink, or there is a Drupal extension for Behat that adds some step definitions that are specific to Drupal, like create a page, create a user, things like that. And then you have a feature context class. All these lines, they're just named class names. So you have library classes that belong to Drupal extension namespace. And then you have feature context, which doesn't belong to any namespace and just belongs to, it's a top level class. And here some extensions may have their own settings. For example, for Mink, you have to specify what browser you want to test your sites with. It can be good. Good is just an extension that uses plain CURL or Gazelle requests for testing. Then you have something more meaningful like Selenium, or Chrome. And that's the feature context, the actual feature context class that may reside in your project. And it contains step definitions that are specific for a project. I'm not sure if you can read from here. Basically, here's a step definition. Then I should see the heading, right? And heading is a name of the argument. That means that if in my Behat scenario, I see the step, I should see the heading and then something. This function will be called, and we have some actual PHP code here. So what happens, we get the current page from the session. Then we have some nodes, DOM nodes inside the page, using the exact same query selectors that we use with JavaScript. And we're checking if the text of these elements that we're looking for matches the parameter of the function. Okay, and then if we don't find anything, we throw an exception, and that tells Behat that something is wrong, and that specific test has failed. So the flow is like this. We write feature description and scenarios, then we run Behat to generate step definitions. We run Behat, we have already step definitions, run tests, they should fail initially. That's the flow for when we have a new feature or when we have a new bug that we told from, I don't know why, who reports bug in your organization. So how do we fix the bug or how we implement a new feature? The flow is the same. So we write feature description in a common language. Then we start adapting it to look like a Gherkin syntax. So we define conditions and then what are expected results. Initially, if you run Behat with these missing step definitions, you will get an error. Behat will tell you, okay, I don't know what to do if I need to go to the user page. I don't have such step definitions. You need to define it. So you get all these errors, and you need to add these step definitions to your feature context. Otherwise, the test won't run. Behat is not, so Behat is a general PHP framework for writing BDD tests, such scenarios. What's good for us as Drupal developers is that it has quite a major extension for work with Drupal. It can use, it can work with both Drush, so we can, for example, create users or content using Drush commands, but also it can perform the same actions that you need to perform before you start the tests, using the regular Drupal UI. So here's a feature that could be Drupal specific, right? So for content management. As a content editor, I need to be able to create and edit content so that I can manage the website effectively. Again, here's the scenario. Create an article. Create an article is not a step definition, it's just a title of this scenario, so it doesn't search for a step definition in your feature context, so just for the information purposes. After a scenario starts, every line is a step. So it has to have appropriate step definition in one of the feature contexts that you use. So given I'm logged in as a user with the editor role, when I go to node/add/article and I fill in title with test article and I fill in body with blah, 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 and I press save, then I should see article test article has been created. Quite a trivial test, quite useful as well, because this is, okay, you need to perform what we call smoke tests after any deploy or after any change you perform on the website, because the sites are so complex that you cannot predict the side effects of any slight change that you perform. Okay, yeah, so this is a very basic setup. To me, it also looks quite straightforward and useful. You can make it more fine-tunable and to adapt to your specific use case. For example, you can add tags. So, for example, if you need to perform certain tests only on production, or you need to perform certain tests only in non-production, you can add appropriate tags to the test file. So I imagine you don't want to test user creation in production environment. Yeah? So we assume that if adding a user on a staging or dev works, then it should work on production as well, but we don't want to test it in fact. So the same goes for creating the content or well, whatever dangerous operations you may think of can be limited with tags. Behat has a system of hooks, quite similar to Drupal has. So we have before and after every step hooks. before and after every feature hooks, and before and after every run. So imaginary actions on these hooks, for example, if you run the test locally and you don't have your browser running, so you need some browser to connect to. And quite a common way to run Behat tests with the browser is to first launch a headless browser in the background mode that just is not visible to any user and listens to a certain port for connecting to it using a WebDriver protocol. So it's quite handy to launch this browser before performing the first step. So before starting the scenario, Behat can launch the browser in background, and then it can launch the browser and ask the browser to listen on certain ports, and then defined in Behat YAML, for example. And then it already can ask this browser to perform certain actions, run JavaScript, navigate, and things like that. So there are a lot of, this tool is very flexible, but it also has its challenges. And the first challenge that is quite frequent is JavaScript-heavy application. So if you have a heavily dynamic page, it can be challenging to explain to Behat what you want without being too specific or too technical. If you have a lot of buttons on the page that have the same name or the same tag name, so it can be really hard to tell which button exactly you want to press or the state of which button you want to check. The common challenge for BDD tests is the test isolation and cleanup. For example, if you want to test your applications on every deploy or on every commit, actually, deploy is not an issue. Commit can be an issue, because if you have an active organization that commits several times or several dozens times a day, then you need to perform a set of tests this several times a day or several dozens times a day, which can be resource intensive and which is more important before starting every test, you need to prepare an environment. So you need to have some pre-installed version of Drupal that you want to test against, because the tests themselves can be disruptive. They can change the data that was on the initial database. This is part of the tests, that they can try to create the content, they can try to log in, they can do other things which destroy the initial state. And when you run the test the next time, you need to have exact the same setup that you run on the first time, for the first time. Yeah, that's data mesh. Next challenge is that what exactly you're testing, right? Behat is a black box testing technology, so it doesn't know anything how your code is written. So it doesn't know the structure of your application, what models are enabled or disabled. It doesn't know that it's written in PHP in the end of the day. So this can be challenging. Yeah, maintaining the same set of tests that would work for different environments, and how we can overcome these challenges or maybe mitigate them. One thing that is hard to follow, actually, it seems simple, but it's hard to follow, is to write scenarios from user perspective. If you write the application, if you write some functionality, you're too intimate with your code. You know too much about it. That's why, if it's possible to add actual stakeholders into the loop, that's the best outcome. So if the Behat feature is initially written not by you, but by the client, someone from the client team, that's the best. Because they know exactly, they know better than you what they want. And also, they don't know the exact implementation. They don't have blind spots that you have writing the code. Well, this second practice is actually the result of the first one. And the third one as well. So be as close to the client as possible. Don't use their language so that in the end of the day, you can show them what you have written. And Behat features become the integral part of your project. And they, as I said in the beginning, become the integral part of the application and also the living documentation of how your application works. Important part is integration with the CI/CD pipeline. So the thing with tests is that you can write a single test, but it won't make any sense if you don't repeat it. If you don't repeat the test execution. So if you have written test once and ensure that it has passed once, it says that your application was good at this specific moment in time. If someone has added a new feature or has fixed their bug, that doesn't mean that the test that has passed a week ago will pass again today. So you need to be sure that the same set of tests or constantly growing set of tests is executed on a regular basis based on the conditions that you define. So how it's all connected to AI? I think it connects quite well, and that's a perfect combination. That's a match made in heaven, right? So AI is good at generating things. The Gen AI that we talk all this week is really good at generating something new. And what if we look at our regular workflow that existed before AI era? How we practiced BDD before AI. So we describe a feature in a natural language. Sorry, that's already AI era. Okay. So how I would do a new feature today in an AI era. So I describe it in natural language. I ask code generation tool to write the code, and then I manually check the code and ensure that it works, right? That's the flow that you can practice with Cloud Code, Windsurf, or whatever tool you use. So, but what if you change this flow slightly by adding a couple of steps? Where am I? Here. So what if after you describe a feature in a natural language, you generate a real feature file from it? So you know what the feature is. You know what it can be a real feature as a new feature. It also can be a feature as something that should have been fixed by the fix that you commit. So what if you describe something that you want to achieve by the code, and even before writing the code, you generate a real feature file in Behat terms? If you need, you can also generate missing step definitions. You can also ask Cloud Code to do that, right? Because it's PHP code, and Cloud Code can write code in any language, including PHP. And that sounds like a perfect workflow for me. And one of the reasons that I personally think BDD is not practiced as widely as it should, we all want to have some perfectly working and completely covered by tests code, right? I believe so, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The only issue is that, not the only issue, but the main issue is that when you have a regional estimation on how much time would a certain feature or bug fix take, you even can plan some time for adding tests, for adding this new feature or for fixing that bug, and not having it in the future. But then we tend to be very optimistic in our estimations. So when you go over your initial estimation, the first thing that you drop into the bin is automated tests, or at least that happens in 100% of projects that I work with. But with this flow, you actually can avoid that. Because the price of generating the feature file with any code generation tool becomes negligible. So it becomes the same. So even before implementing your actual code, you already have the test that would cover it. So that's it. That sounds good to me. And I think that's it. So I have added some resources and saved some time for questions if you have them. Actually, when I started working on that presentation, or I was already finishing it, and someone in AI channel on Drupal Slack has mentioned that they have the same expectations, they have the same thoughts about coupling of AI and behavior-driven development. And there are already at least 2 projects on Drupal.org that are going to fix this, or they are working actively on it, so you can check them if you want. And there is BDD channel in Drupal Slack that you can join and ask your questions and work together with other people. So you'd be absolutely welcome. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer, or let's discuss. Yeah. No questions is usually a bad sign. It means either I wasn't clear or I was too clear, and usually it's the first one. But okay, so no question it is. Thank you all for